Hey everybody, married man here. Was looking forward to doing some woodwork, but I needed to cut some lines that are not straight and that are on small pieces. Now, I don't have a bandsaw or scroll saw or one of those computerized laser cutters. I don't have that equipment. What I do have is a jigsaw, but holding small pieces and cutting it with the jigsaw and doing it accurately is virtually impossible. So I need a jig that allows me to have more space. So I was thinking, turn this upside down, and there's plenty of videos out there on how to make an inverted jigsaw jig on the YouTube. But I got a few goals here. I don't want to buy equipment to do this. No special wiring, anything like that. I want to use scraps where possible, and I don't need this all the time. So I want a jig that I can keep, but that I can store away in a small space because I'm working out of a garage. If you want to know how I did it, come with me. I'll show you. First things first, let's look at the saw we have to work with. This is a DeWalt. It's an older saw, standard cord. It's got the adjustable bevel on here. We'll have to make sure that that's set at 90. It's got a trigger, so we'll have to figure out how we're going to do the power source. And it's unfortunately does not have the T-shank blades, but has the U-shank blades that fit in there with a Allen wrench. So I went over to my scrap pile looking for a piece to be the base of our jig, and I initially found a 18-inch piece that was like an old shelf of a TV unit, but it was like melamine or smooth on both sides. So I regrouped, found a 15-inch piece that was smooth on one side and it was rough on the other side, which would give me more traction for my glue up. I then took it over to make some measurements using the jigsaw. I wanted to make sure that it was centered left to right and far enough back that I'd have a nice surface to hold my material flat, but not so far back that I could not secure the jigsaw underneath. I made a mark at the center point where I wanted it, used a square to square up and make a mark exactly where I wanted the hole to be for the saw blade to slide through. And then I took my drill and made a series of small 1/16 or smaller holes to open it up for the blade, and I just moved that back and forth until I could secure the hole the size that I wanted it. At this point, I was taking a saw blade, check the fit in the hole, make sure it could move without friction, and then make adjustments with my drill, just open up the hole just a little bit to allow for movement of the blade up and down as the jigsaw worked. I would then turn the board over, position the saw in place with the blade through the hole, and determine what wood and so forth I needed to secure this into place. I squared this up and took a marker and marked around it just so that I wouldn't significantly get it out of place during this process. This is what I came up with. Several pieces of scrap wood that I could glue down and a couple of lever clamps that would help hold the saw in place whenever it was turned upside down. The wood needed to be secure up against the saw, but at a fit that would allow me to pull the saw out and use it elsewhere on other projects. And here's my glue up. I used several clamps and other scrap pieces of wood to reach to areas that the clamps would not reach. I was worried that I would not get enough pressure in those areas, but I could tell by the glue run out here that I was getting enough pressure, and I let this sit for a while, let it set up without moving it. After the glue set up, I was able to go back, remove the clamps, pre-drill, and insert some screws to hold everything down. Here, I had to remove the last clamp, pre-drill, and screwed that back piece in to place. I have one cordless drill, so I have to change out between drill bits and driver heads so that I can screw these into place. These screws had Phillips head, which I know is not ideal. I prefer star points, but that worked just fine in this area. I then could place my saw in place in the jig. There's no movement side to side, and I could look at installing my lever clamps. I took a red marker after placing it where I wanted it and just put where I needed to pre-drill. Here I'll be using the same drill bit with the piece for countersinking, but I will not be countersinking these. I'm just using the drill portion. And here I'm only doing one of the clamps. I did the other clamp off of camera to save your time on this video. With the boards surrounding the jigsaw and the clamps, I expect that this would hold the jigsaw in place. After screwing in the lever clamp, I have to make an adjustment to the clamp itself so that it catches that corner of the jigsaw base, which with a 200-pound holding pressure of the clamp should be plenty strong to hold it in place whenever I invert this jig. So, pretty psyched about the way this came out. We glued the boards down for support. We installed these operating clamps, and with those secure, I was a little bit worried about the holding power to make sure we could hold the saw, but as you see, it doesn't move at all. I can pick it up. It picks up the whole board with it, so I have no hesitation now of relying on these. So fantastic. Now I've got to figure out how to get some power. This is what I came up with for my power problem. Seems pretty simple. It's a clamp from Harbor Freight, which I already had. I pull the trigger, tighten the clamp, and now everything is secure. I should be able to turn it over, plug it in, see how it does. I'm going to have to clamp it down to 2 tables or to 2 sawhorses. Since I have 2 tables here with a space in between, I'm just going to clamp it to the tables and we'll see how it goes. Okay, it's hard to see because it's a black surface, so it's going to be hard to show up on this video. I've got it clamped down here and here, and it seems pretty sturdy on these 2 tables. I've got a clamp on the power, so whenever I plug this up, we should have power and we should see that blade going up and down. Let's light this firecracker and see what happens. All right. I don't know if y'all can see that heat build up. Right here, it charred the wood. Actually set my pattern on fire there for a moment. I think I'll have to take a look, see what might have happened there. But overall, worked as desired. I've got a pattern cut out. Needs a little sanding. Scorched a couple of places. Might have something to do with the speed that I was going at. So I'm going to have to work out the kinks. But overall, it gives me a method to produce something that I was unable to produce previously. So here I make another cut on a template and did not have any fire issues. I found and made an adjustment where the blade was rubbing on the new jig, and I just had to open that hole up at that point a little bit more, and I replaced the blade and it cut without incident. One of the goals of the jig was to make it accessible and easy to store. Even with the clamps on there, it's not very thick. I go right back over to my scrap pile, slide it in here next to my ladder. Takes up very little room. So everybody, I think the jig turned out great. It accomplished what I wanted to. I was able to use scraps. Didn't have to buy anything new except for the lever clamps, and it provides me a way that I don't have to leave my jigsaw in it. I can easily take my jigsaw in and out, and I can attach it to 2 tables with a couple of clamps or to 2 sawhorses, and I'm very happy with the way this turned out. And it stores in very little space. You can see how thin it is. That being said, there are a lot of great videos out there for making an inverted jigsaw jig. Stumpy Nubs made one years ago. DIY Creators has got a great one. I really like his power switch, but he had to invest in that, and his is fixed to leave the saw in it, I believe. I want to give credit to Reuter, I believe is his name. I will put the link to all these names and their channels and videos down below in the comments. But Andrew is where I got the idea to use the lever clamps, and I really like that. And I want to make sure to give him credit for that. And that turns out to be a great way. The clamps are the only thing I had to buy. I bought them from Amazon, and I think they're a 5-pack for like $14 or $15. So I still have 3 to use somewhere else on another project. I want to thank you for watching the video. If you would, consider subscribing. I have other videos on the channel, and I'll see you next time. Oh, my wife's calling. I gotta go.